And I will share my screen. Alrighty, hold on, screen 2. Can everyone see my presentation? Yeah, okay, perfect. Well, thank you all so much for joining. My name is Kathleen Kashiri, and I am the VP of Programs for the San Francisco Bay Area chapter of the Association of Environmental Professionals. We are in Zoom land, which is really great because normally I'd only be throwing events for the Bay Area, but since we're on the internet, this event is open to all of you. So I've heard a couple of you are from Humboldt, some are from down south. So this is all very exciting. So I will go ahead and get started. I'm going to go over the schedule really quickly just to give you an overview of how we're going to do things. We're going to start out with introductions. I'm going to give you a bit of a description on what the Association of Environmental Professionals is and what we do, along with some information about membership. And then we'll break out into our first breakout room session. And this will give you an opportunity to talk directly to speakers about both your goals for this session, along with your overall career goals, so we can get just a baseline idea of where you're at as a student and your overall goals. And then from there, we'll go into our 3 presentations from our speakers today. We have a presentation from Erica, Sean, and Bob. And then finally, we'll do a second breakout room session to give you an opportunity, after hearing about their career journeys and what they have to say, a chance to discuss with them and any questions you might have with them. And then this will also give them an opportunity to share any tips and tricks they have for moving your career forward in whatever direction you want it to go. And then finally, we'll come back together as a group, do a final Q&A, and then I will announce the raffle prize winner. And you might have noticed in the description, I am going to be raffling off, or we will be raffling off, a Patagonia backpack, Hydro Flask, and Write in the Rain notebook. And I don't know if you guys have ever used a Write in the Rain notebook if you've done field work, but when it's raining outside and your ink gets all smudged, this is like the perfect solution for it. So for all of you people wanting to go in the environmental field, maybe do some field work, this is a great tool along with the backpack and water bottle. Okay, so moving on. So about the Association of Environmental Professionals, we were founded in 1974. This is a nonprofit organization filled with both public and private sector folks. And we focus on various principles, but we focus a lot on CEQA. And I'm not sure if you've heard about that in your schooling, but it's the California Environmental Quality Act. And through, a lot of us are CEQA practitioners, as we're here today. And we do a lot of stuff like environmental assessment analyses, public disclosure and reporting. And membership to the association is typically $150 a year. But we are doing complimentary student memberships in perpetuity. So, and there are a lot of benefits to this. You can go to conferences, you can go to events like this. Once it becomes more safe to do so, we throw more in-person events to give you an opportunity to network in person as well. And there's just a lot of great perks. So to find out more information, you can go to our website here at www.califaep.org. But also, I'm going to have Madeline Jones, the director, the membership director for our board, give you a little bit more information on our member benefits. So Madeline, I will pass the mic to you.
Thanks, Kathleen. So as Kathleen mentioned, my name's Madeline Jones. I am the membership director for the Bay Area chapter of AEP. I recently started this position this year, but we are really boosting our membership, and we're really glad that you guys are all here, and hope that you, if you are not already, consider becoming a member of our chapter. So as Kathleen mentioned, I just wanted to preface this, that if you are a current student taking 12 units or more, you can join AEP for free. And you can just go online easily and Google AEP and put in your information. It's super easy to become a member. And then I'll go through a couple of the benefits here. So We get a complimentary CEQA statute and guidelines handbook each year. So as Kathleen mentioned, that's really helpful for CEQA practitioners. It has a lot of updated case law, and when CEQA guidelines change, that's the most current updated version. I use it weekly, if not daily, when I'm actively working on a project. So that's a great benefit. We have a lot of educational and networking opportunities just within our chapter, and as well as activities that are hosted by the state board. So we will have educational, informational webinars on certain environmental topics, or we'll do more like social casual networking events, drinks, food here and there. And as Kathleen mentioned as well, we're hoping to get back into some more in-person activities as it is safe to do so. We also offer $100 off on event registration for members for the annual AEP conference, CEQA and NEPA workshops, other webinars. So you get discounted event membership when you sign up for certain events. But one note is if you are a student, all those events will be free to you. So that is one perk if you're already a student. We also get access to the CEQA portal, which has a lot of other really helpful informational documents about certain topics and how to address technical issues, and just a lot of good general information. We also have the online journal publications, Environmental Monitor, Environmental Assessor. Those come out with a lot of relevant information going on in the environmental world. And legislative activities, monthly updates. So case law impacts a lot of what we do. So it's really important for us to stay on top of, upcoming cases and decisions, as well as opportunities to earn AICP and MCLE credits. I'm not super familiar with those because I'm not in the AICP or law track at the moment. But that's another benefit of being a member as well. You can get those credits by attending AEP events. And lastly, networking and career building opportunities. I've met a lot of people in AEP, only being here for a short time. And Kathleen brought me over here being coworkers. So it's a great place to meet a lot of people, learn a lot. The environmental field is very vast, as you are starting to learn. So yeah, AEP is a great resource. And I'll put my email in the chat I don't know if Kathleen has that. So I'll put my email in the chat in case anyone has any other membership related questions. And note also, we have, I think, 9 different chapters of AEP. So you can register if you're not in the Bay Area. You can register to be in other chapters as well if you are interested in doing that when we get to having more local events. So that's my membership plug.
Awesome. Thank you, Madeline. And thanks for adding your email to the chat. That'll be really helpful for people with membership questions.
Yeah, just sent it. Thanks, Kathleen.
Awesome. Okay. So with this, we are going to go into our first breakout room, and please bear with me. This is, I'm still new at this whole Zoom thing. I know it's terrible a year and a half into the pandemic, but here we are. So the 2 questions I pose to you as participants are, 1, what do you hope to get out of this presentation? And 2, what are your personal career goals? Alrighty, I am going to open the breakout room. Let us see. Okay, I think that's even with everyone in a breakout room. Hi, Christian. I'm going to move you to a breakout room right now. Hi, Christian. Are you just joining? Not join? I can't. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. I was able to join all of the rooms and I heard some great conversation. Does anyone want to speak up or give some opinions on what they hope to get out of this presentation and their career goals before we jump into Erica's presentation? Anyone at all?
I will say what happened in my breakout groups. I had fabulous people that were interested in water quality, energy, environmental engineering, environmental planning. What kinds of themes? I'm curious, just before I do get started, what other themes were present in other rooms?
Yeah, so we had a pretty diverse group as well, from solar energy policy to endangered species conservation. We also have a consultant with us who has a chemical engineering background, so wild card. And we also have some people who are kind of take a more interdisciplinary approach. So I think you've got a lot to cover.
That's awesome. And I hope that my interdisciplinary career speaks to that kind of background as well and those kinds of interests. So I'm super excited to dive in. Does that sound good?
Sure.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sean. That helps a lot.
All righty. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Perfect.
Just
All right. So our first.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm going to quickly introduce you, and we can go into your presentation. So our first speaker is Erica, and she is a fire outreach and development specialist with the Sonoma Ecology Center. And I will give it to you to take it away, Erica.
Awesome. Yeah. And it keeps changing every day. I'm now the creek stewardship program lead as well. So it's all been related to water, but it's upland use and down use as well. I think I actually have 2 education slides. So sorry about that, everybody. All right. So my name's Erica Warren. I have worked a lot in mitigating human impacts in the Anthropocene on the natural environment. So how do we mitigate those? We use best management practices to keep things out of the watershed that shouldn't be there. So I started my career in the pristine land of fish and ended my career in construction and post-fire. And it's not all bad. It's all about team building and all sorts of things like that. So I have my undergraduate degree, my BA, in ecology and fine art from the Evergreen State College. And then I have my master's from the University of San Francisco. Both great programs, strong recommendation. And I love that people are from all over the state here as well. Next slide. And this one might be a double. Yeah, this one's a double. Let's just keep on moving on. But one thing to highlight from this slide that I didn't from the other is just those trainings that I listed have been really important to me all along. So like HAZWOPER, wilderness first responder, although maybe not so much these days, CPR. I even have my preliminary career technical education credential. I've got background and training in these other things as well. Next slide. In the beginning, I've just fallen in love with nature. I've done it through recreation. I've done it through exploring and teaching kids science, through the anatomy of bones and skeletons. So the puzzles of nature have been really compelling to me. And I no more so than the California red-legged frog. So I've like deep dove into the California red-legged frog, which has been amazing because you can apply so many environmental laws when you're protecting this creature. And it is surprisingly resilient despite it having different limitations on its environmental requirements at its different life stages. Next slide. This frog has been pictured all throughout history in different ways, and we've related to it in other other amphibian species and herpto species in different ways. So they've been singing to us, we've been kissing them, and then they also are like peculiar and they can eat large rodents or at least seemingly large to their size, as well as snakes and other things as well. And then we eat some frogs as well. Next slide. So it's been a really compelling animal to me, and I've studied it. In fact, I've studied juvenile use of built habitats. So I was there on the breaking of ground when Muir Beach started large-scale construction, and I totally fell in love with it. But I didn't realize exactly what it meant to fall in love with that topic. So I keep finding my way back to what is it that the people that were doing that kind of construction were really doing. So it was environmental engineering, it was landscape design, it was a lot of like programmatic and grant applications. Anyway, I compared egg mass data over the years to my actual ponds that were constructed during that construction phase, and then the actual observed use of California red-legged frogs. Next slide. In addition to my study design, which I can go more into, I've also done construction monitoring and wetland delineations, volunteer management in parks, culvert replacements, removal of invasive species, and it all involves, as that lower left image indicates, a lot of early mornings. Next slide. I think this is a really good moment to just kind of return to that theme in my career, which is reducing impacts of humans on the natural environment. So we create urban development, we place an invasive species in places they shouldn't go. We do it through the chassis of our car, the bottoms of the feet of the soles of our boots, as well as different species that we actually track in or intentionally bring in to these spaces. We have many watersheds that are sediment polluted, which is not a pollutant that you would commonly think of, but like the Sonoma Creek, which is the watershed I currently work in, is highly sediment contaminated, along with the kind of typical heavy metal contaminations that a lot of people are concerned with. Next slide. In my career, having transitioned from frogs into biological assessments, delineations, and kind of overall environmental consulting, I've done a lot of presentations about our work as well. So I kind of download the skills and capacities of my coworkers. I say, how could that work in a variety of different scenarios, and what are some great stories from the field? And then I present these as a business opportunity to potential clients after we apply to like their RFP or RFQ, depending on the scope and scale of the project. Next slide. When I'm applying for jobs, because I have been an educator, because I've been an environmental monitor, because I have this deep and abiding interest in environmental construction for restoration, like I just went to a training for large woody debris installations in creeks, which everybody should be deeply excited about if you love carbon and getting, building large fish, and that requires a lot of carbon and cover as well for natal streams and habitats. When I'm thinking about selling my skills, I think about these kind of large skills on the top that I lead with. So I lead with my connections to agencies, my ability to relate to stakeholders in project management, my ability to develop new programs and to lead with aplomb and confidence and apply for RFPs and queues, my biological services, and then my kind of scientific background as well. But in addition to that, I have some very core competencies that are deeply applicable, that are related to education, workforce development, deep understandings of science, and their ability to be translated to the everyday world for lay audiences, such as exploration and hands-on learning. Mentorship has been a huge core theme in my life, both the mentors that I've benefited from, as well as the helping hand or just company that I've been able to provide to people that are new in their careers, which has been an awesome way to contribute. And then my experience with community conversations, community science. And then I just deeply have a love of art, as it's a great way to do observational learning in the environment. I would like to go to the next slide. So when I'm thinking about project management, I also can do the reverse. So here's my main tip is going to be something else that I'll tell you in a minute. But I also like to think structurally kind of backwards and forwards. I'm a very visual thinker. So these slides, I literally will make these slides before I'm presenting or applying for jobs sometimes. And these slides kind of help me think like, okay, well, in project management, how have I applied these in the 9 different careers that I either have had or will have in the future? And so it helps me to think strategically how I can hit that for and evidence my skill set for the hiring managers or the department leads or whoever I come across. It's a really great way to get my brain connecting to my mouth so that I can speak these words clearly. Next slide. So my final tip to all of you is to have conversations and to do informational interviews. And there's a lot of really cool resources out there. And I'm happy to provide my connections and the recommendations I have for making informational interviews. I've developed a core set of questions and I've pulled from other resources as well. So feel free and connect with me here online. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Erica. That was an awesome presentation and overview of your career path along with great tips and tricks. So thank you. I really appreciate it. Moving on to our second presentation, it is going to be by Sean Anaya. Did I pronounce your name right, last name right, Sean?
Yes, perfect. Great job.
Anaya, perfect, thank you. He is an associate at PlaceWorks. And let me pull up your slides. All right, Sean, take it away.
Great, thanks everybody. So my name is Sean Anaya, and we're going to do a deep dive into my journey so far in the environmental industry. Just start a timer. Next slide, please. So when I was preparing the presentation, I was kind of wondering where the journey starts. Does it start when we're kids, when we're camping with our families, or during high school when we meet with our career counselor and try to decide what we're going to be when we grow up? But for the purpose of this presentation, I think the most relevant point in my life when I decided I want to pursue an environmental career was when I took AP, I was choosing between AP Biology or AP Environmental Science in high school. And, I wasn't so great at chemistry. So I thought, well, I'll do AP Environmental Science. And I'm really glad I did, because it's kind of taken me down this path. So that was at Folsom High School near Sacramento. I subsequently went to Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo. I know there's one other Cal Poly student here, but I was also deciding on going to Humboldt State University, but the sunshine won out. So I have a picture of a kangaroo rat here, which is what I did my bachelor's thesis and senior project on with Dr. Francis Villablanca. So we were looking at the Hermanni kangaroo rat, which is a surrogate for the endangered Morro Bay kangaroo rat, and just studying its ecology and the effects of invasive belt grass and how that's impacting their communities. So that's that was my undergrad. Next slide. My other portion of my education was my grad school was I decided to go abroad. When I was deciding where to go abroad, I thought, well, what country has a very rigorous environmental, governing outlook and policy in the world. And I kind of identified Denmark, especially their focus on climate change and renewable energy. So I applied for and was accepted to a master's program at the University of Copenhagen. It was a dual degree program. So the first year was in Copenhagen, and the second year was in Vienna at the University of Natural Resources and Life Sciences, which is a great school that focuses on, Austria is a heavily wooded country with a lot of forest. So it was really interesting for me to see their approach on forest management and kind of the new close to nature approach. And there I focused on biofuels. So focused on renewable energy and how they derive energy from wood. Also, I just really enjoyed traveling and getting to meet people while I was there. I will mention the first photo. If you are interested in urban planning, Copenhagen has developed this 5-finger plan approach. So the purple is the city center, and then you can see there's 5 arterial corridors that are really focused on bike and ped. The bike paths are about as wide as car paths. So it was a really great place to be. Next slide. I also wanted to mention ongoing life learning. It's important as you go through your career to, focus on other education sources. Right now, I'm going through the Project Management Institute to obtain my PMP, which is Project Management Professional, just learning tools on budgeting, invoicing, scheduling. You'll see that as you progress in your career, you'll do less of the fun field and bio work and more of the kind of corporate stuff that you'll just grow to love. Next slide, please. My work experience, briefly, I think it's important to share this. I started my career actually as an intern, a student assistant at the California Department of Transportation as an environmental planner. And then I was hired on in the Stockton office as environmental planner and stayed for 3 years, promoting to an associate. And then I left and wanted to try out the private industry. Then I moved on to environmental resource management, Montrose Environmental Group, and now I'm at PlaceWorks. And I just wanted to show this because I think it's important to share it, to give everybody confidence that, the first job you start out at is not the job you need to stay at for the rest of your career. If you find other projects that you're interested, each one of these private companies and public agencies have different focuses. So I'm going to share a few case studies, but Caltrans was very highway oriented. So a lot of wetland impacts. ERM is a global company that focuses on oil and gas. So there was oil decommissioning. Montrose is kind of new on the block. So we were trying to figure out our way. And then PlaceWorks is a real urban planning firm. So there's room for growth wherever you go. Next slide. The first project I would like to share was when I was at Caltrans. This was Pocket Canyon Creek, which is along State Route 116 in Petaluma. This was basically a neglected infrastructure. The road failed and was falling down into the creek below and some riparian habitat. So Caltrans proposed replacing the roadway in kind, but adding a retaining wall and upgraded culvert facilities. The main biological impacts were riparian and vegetation. There were heritage oak trees, California red-legged frog, foothill yellow-legged frog, salmonids, and other special status plants and wildlife. Some of the required permitting. So this isn't going to be another big component of your career if you work in this industry. So we have, for instance, the CDFW 1602 Stream and Lake Bed Alteration Agreement. That's basically if you work in any waterways, that's more wildlife focused. There's also the 2081 incidental take permit from CDFW. That's if, say for instance, there's going to be any harm to a California red-legged frog or some other California listed species. Similarly with the United States Fish and Wildlife Service biological opinion or the National Marine Fisheries Service biological opinion, if there will be any impact to salmonids or federally listed species. Then when we talk about wetland impacts, there's also coordination with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. There is a training available for obtaining a certification so that you can conduct wetland delineations. And that's just basically identifying if there's a wetland in the area and what the impacts are going to be. There's also permits from the water boards to ensure that during and after the project, the water quality stays high. And then because we're in a coastal area, the Coastal Commission, and then local development permits. So it can be really complicated really quickly. The outcome of this project was we advised the engineers to replant with riparian species. A small amount of take was allowed. Wetland mitigation credits were purchased from Westervelt Ecological Services. And yeah, that's a Caltrans project. Next slide. This one is another Caltrans project, which is kind of a annual occurrence, it seems like, where there are mudslides from along Highway 1. So this was, I was working temporarily down in District 5 because they needed assistance, which is the San Luis Obispo office. And we had a mudslide, and there is a routine programmatic maintenance agreement so that the maintenance crew can go out as quickly as possible and repair the roadway. And, you know, us biologists go out there and observe and make sure that the work is, well, basically, we're really just documenting. We're documenting and corresponding with the agencies. So the main species we were concerned about was the Smith's blue butterfly, which is only found on an 80-mile stretch of coast in Central California, the California red-legged frog, nesting birds, and special status plant species. The required permitting was CEQA and NEPA. So that was both the California Environmental Quality Act and National Environmental Policy Act document. And there was a programmatic agreement so that they could do the work. So ultimately there was slope stabilization and the road was repaired. Next slide. Kathleen, please let me know if I'm over. I'll speed it up.
You're great, thank you.
Great. Next case study project was at Environmental Resources Management. So this is the routine PG&E utility maintenance. So PG&E has been getting a lot of heat for not adequately maintaining their utility lines, which has resulted in fires throughout California. So we were hired by PG&E to assist them with their CEQA and NEPA permitting requirements. Most of the projects were exempted from CEQA and NEPA. So we filled out the documentation that these were categorically exempt or excluded. And the reasoning was that this would be considered a minor alteration and it could be seen with certainty that no significant effect on the environment could result from granting the requested authorization. Also, these were kind of emergency projects that PG&E needed to service their wires. The outcome was in-kind replacement of PG&E power lines and utilities. Next slide. This is one of my most recent big projects. Is the I'm with PlaceWorks, and it's the Emerald High School EIR. So this is in Dublin, here in the far East Bay, which was a new high school. District high school, and I managed the environmental impact report. And it was just an empty, undeveloped lot. So there were a lot of studies that we conducted. Biological impacts. So we prepared a full impact analysis from Appendix G of the CEQA handbook. So for those of you who are not familiar, that you go topic by topic through the environmental impacts like aesthetics, air quality, biological resources, cultural resources, geology and soils, so on and so forth. The required permitting, we conducted the environmental impact report, and the outcome was that we found that there would be significant and unavoidable impacts to aesthetics, greenhouse gas emissions, noise, and recreation. So the aesthetics were due to the stadium lighting, which we attempted to mitigate with aesthetic wall, but we could not get it high enough. So those impacts remain significant and unavoidable. For greenhouse gas emissions, it would be due to mobile emissions from vehicle trips to and from the school. We tried to mitigate this through solar panels, but it wasn't enough. And then for noise, it was traffic associated with operation of the project, such as the stadium would just increase too much noise during operation. And then for recreation impacts, that was due to the increased amount of students in the area, and there would be impacts on local recreation facilities. Next slide. I just wanted to briefly mention my master's thesis, which was conducted at the university in Vienna, and it was creating biochar through a process called pyrolysis. Some of you may or may not know about biochar, but it seems to be potentially an end-all cure-all for climate change. So just a shameless plug. And if you get some time, do some research. We focused on batch pyrolysis of cotton stalks for energy potential and carbon sequestration. We found that you could densify energy through pyrolyzing these agricultural wastes. So you have a higher density energy product, and it's you produce 3 byproducts. So char, bio oil, and synthesis gas. And these could be used for either energy or sequestering carbon. It was published in the International Journal of Renewable Energy. If you're interested in that, you can reach out and I can share that with you. Next slide. Okay, and that's my presentation. Apologies, it looks like I went over a little bit, but feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or by email. I do have, connections from being in the industry for a while, not too long, but long enough. I did want to leave 4 tips for the attendees. Was that first, find a mentor. It's so important to have a manager who has your back, and colleagues as well. Second is to dig into your interests, find out what, that thought that just comes up when you're at work related to the industry, and follow it. Don't be afraid to speak up. And also, fourth, move into a new space. You don't have to stay at your first job forever. The environmental industry is very diverse. So yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sean, and thanks to everyone. I'm sure you all have lots of questions, but we're going to save those for the end. One thing I wanted to really highlight now that I'm listening to both Sean and Erica's presentation is just the interdisciplinary nature of the environmental field, right? So you can be a planner and work on CEQA and work on planning, actual on the ground, reports, or you can be a biologist and go out and do the surveys required for these water permitting agencies. So it is so diverse, and you can follow your interests, and different organizations, both in the public and private sector, can really have different effects on the way your interests go. So just one thing I wanted to highlight. But moving on, our third speaker for the night is Bob Brown, and he is the principal planner at SHM Engineering. All right, Bob, I am going to give it to you now. I think you may be on mute, Bob.
Yes, that's what I was looking for, the unmute button. So, all right. So just by introduction, I guess I'm the dinosaur of this group. I'm going to switch things around a little bit because I've been involved in hiring environmental consultants. A little bit of background, I've been probably 40 years in the environmental consulting field doing CEQA and other things. I was just thinking that CEQA was probably a dozen years old, as well as the Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, NEPA, those kinds of things are just kind of brand new. So I've been with SHN since 2016. I head the planning and biological services for SHN. And prior to that, I had my own consulting firm for 20 years. So another option ahead of you. I've been a planner for a lot of cities and counties and rural areas. And I also work for private developers, developments. So some of the very briefly tasks I work with are wetland and stream restoration, mining, targeted income housing, general plans, housing elements, energy projects, recreation, wildfire, industrial projects. So just being a real jack of all trades. And it's just been a really interesting career. So I also teach the CEQA NEPA class at Humboldt State University for the senior environmental engineering students. I've been teaching for 13 years. I'm on the San Francisco board of AEP. Just picking one project, our team was involved in writing the EIR for the removal of 3 of the Klamath River dams, analyzing primarily the construction related impacts. Well, it is basically a large construction project. So, and as I mentioned, I've been involved in hiring environmental professionals and interns for most of my 40-year career. And I mentioned to my group that I had 2 internships, which ended up with 2 part-time jobs. So today's focus I really want to do is just kind of on career direction. So next slide. I kind of want to, I'll be using, because of shortage of time, some generalities or stereotypes. But if you're in an environmental career, there's typically 4 directions you might be able to go into. One is the public, and another private. Others are your non-governmental organizations or nonprofits. And then the 4th is teaching or being involved in academia or doing research. So, and when I review people's resumes or conduct interviews, I try to see who's really suited for private work, since that's what I'm involved in. Our company does do a lot of public work by contract, and so that's also another consideration, but it's something that you might be considering. Which of these 4 career choices should you pursue? And as Sean had mentioned, and I think Erica was jumping around too, is that, you know, if you work in the private sector, you should work sometime in the public. And if you work in the public sector, you should experience the private or some of these other careers. So next slide. So I'm going to focus on the top 2 and talk about some of the major differences between public and private careers in the environment. I've, like mentioned, worked on city, county, state, and federal governments at one point, and my preference has been private sector, and that's where I've spent most of my career. But again, that's not for everyone. Next. And so I wanted to kind of point out a few of the differences. So thinking about public sector jobs, I use the word regulatory. So you're involved in writing policy, you're permit processing, you're doing enforcement. Maybe I should use the word compliance. A lot of times you are assessing and fixing. So you have a situation. Sean showed some photos of Caltrans where there was an existing project and you had to go in because there was an environmental problem. You had to go and assess it and come up with a fix. Typically, public sector jobs pay more. They have better benefits, but there's more of a bureaucracy, and sometimes you can get pigeonholed. So you have a limited scope of job, but it is a steady 8-hour, 40-hour-a-week job. And then they often hire environmental consultants to do regulatory or design work. So anyway, again, just some generalities. Next slide. In comparison, the private sector does more work in the design. And this is where I really like it, because I can influence the design of a project. So it's nice to have good projects get permitted and help them do that. It's nice when you can to take bad projects and improve them through design. So again, as we do an environmental analysis, there is, rather than go through CEQA NEPA right away, we can redesign projects that are proposed, where most government work gets applications submitted and then they're trying to fix those projects. So, you know, design that does not only include in the project description, but also mitigation. So the second point is anticipating and avoiding. So where government seems to focus on assessing and fixing, our goal, again, a generality, is to try and anticipate impacts and avoid those impacts or minimize those impacts. In comparison to government jobs, typically would be lower wages, maybe less benefits. That's again, a generality. But there's also more opportunities and a broader scope. So you never know what kind of new project you might run into, just as Sean had shared about the high school in Dublin. So there's a saying that you only need to work half a day to be profitable, but you get to decide which half of the day you want to work. So 12 hours. So again, not a typical 40-hour work week. And we do get hired by public entities to do both regulatory and design work. Next slide. So I wanted to go through some factors about private sector environmental careers. And I was trying to think of what is important in the interview process. So one, we're really looking for team players. What we use now for our interview process is some ideas. This Humble, Hungry, Smart. Patrick Lencioni wrote a book called The Ideal Team Player. It goes into a lot more detail on this. So again, what is humble, hungry, and smart? And these are typical questions that we might ask, as mentioned here. And I should mention, with the humble, hungry, smart, if you did a search for that on the internet, you'll get some interview questions. You'll get more information about the definition of some of these terms. So again, being humble, it isn't thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. And it's really hard in an interview process because you're trying to sell yourself, trying to put your best foot forward. But again, I think what's really important here is opportunities that you've had to work as a team. That should probably be what your focus should be. Hungry, you know, at the beginning, I want someone who lives to work, but after a few years, then you can go back to work to live. So I'm really looking at someone who's self-motivated, diligent, driven, forward thinking. So, and then smart isn't about intellect, but how you relate to each other. So we aren't all extroverts, but at times we need to act like one. We also need to know when to listen and have compassion. And then sometimes we really need to be a shark. So again, are you humble, hungry, smart? That's what the interview process may be about. So just don't say so. We want, you know, I would encourage you to provide evidence or examples. You know, your cover letter, sometimes it just says attached is my resume, but you should use your cover letter. Really, I look at the cover letter and the information in there more than I do the resume. So don't waste that opportunity if you are thinking about applying for a particular job. You can really hit some of these things home with that. So next slide. So some of the examples of interview questions, and feel free, if you want to practice, go ahead, take a photo of these slides. But again, I'm not looking so much for experience, but how well you will fit into my team. So nervousness is okay, but am I comfortable talking with you? Are you comfortable talking with me? Are we having a conversation? And 80% of the interview should be you talking. So even I ask you simple yes and no questions, take that opportunity to run with it. And because I'm trying to evaluate how you will fit within the team. And you really can only convince me by talking during the interview. So I may even have a dozen questions to ask you. And I might just ask you the first question, you know, tell me something about yourself. And you may just talk through the whole thing and answer all my questions. And I know that you would be a good fit for my team. So you know, I might control the questions, you control the answers. So be prepared on what points you want to make. So the question here about humble. So we all make mistakes. So, you know, think about I think, again, focusing on team and how you can work with the team and work together. Hungry. The second question there, what do you like to do when you're not working? So if your answer is, well, I like to go home, grab a brew, watch some TV. That's not why I'm asking the question. So even if you have a dead-end job, you can get involved in the community, you can volunteer for a group, you can be involved in associations, you can continue to get training, as Sean had mentioned. So it's not so important that you tell me you're an avid hiker. I really want to see that you're pursuing a professional career in some of the other activities. So again, you're a server at a restaurant because you're at college, you're trying to make a living. And again, thinking about how you're pursuing your career on your time off. So, and then smart, again, how do you deal with difficult people? Next slide. So just a couple miscellaneous pointers. I would encourage you to focus on careers. The question that Kathleen asked was what are some of the career options that people were thinking of? And it's not surprising teaching seniors at Humboldt, but a lot of people haven't really thought about their career. They're worried about their grades. And so I would encourage you to be starting to use class assignments, chances to meet people in the place maybe that you hope to work, make those contacts and career preparations, and get involved in internships. Those are really important. And I would rather hire a B student instead of an A student that's had some real life experience and knows what they want to do. But there's a lot of missed opportunities because the focus has been on the grade, not on your future career. So again, most of my senior students don't know exactly what they want to do. You can always pursue something, change your mind later, but pursue a career choice with passion. And as you do those class assignments, it gives you a certain perspective on what's happening around you. So yeah, you might want to become a field biologist. Look at the world through that. Look at all your class assignments through that view. And then you might switch over and end up being a SQL practitioner. So trainable rather than experience. I need a team player. I need someone I can to coach. I don't need a ball hog. So I'm really not, the people with 10 years experience sometimes are hard to retrain to become a team member. Resumes. I used to write this and I get a lot of these that say, I'm a quick learner. I can do anything. I just need a chance. Just hire me and I'll show you that I can be a person. And I'd say the one thing that's missing are examples. So CEQA talks about substantial evidence. Give me substantial evidence why you say that, those kinds of things. So if you're a shift manager, why is that relevant? Again, in your cover letter, you learned responsibility, the value of a teamwork. You learned how to relate to people going through rough times. We might call those customers jerks, but they might just be going through a rough time. How did you handle them? Did you, shrug them off, or did you try and show some compassion? So, and again, thinking about biology. So dual type of careers. If you're a biologist, you may only get part-time summer help. That's when the most biology happens. So what would you do during the winter time? So thinking about a second aspect of that. Next slide. Oh, wait, before you go there, just a couple things I've noticed. I call them, can you go back? Oh, yeah, okay. Hoppers. So I notice people hopping around every 2 years or so. And so, as someone who might hire you for a job, I'm looking at a 2-year period where then you become useful, but then you also become able to make the next jump over to a different job. And so I'm kind of looking at work history and how long you've stayed there. The gappers, I'm also looking for gaps in work. And there's some reasons that may happen, but again, thinking about that hungry aspect. And then the fluffers, I call them, is people who are stretching a little bit of what they do into experience. So I just recently saw a resume of someone who worked for a county on a general plan for 3 months, but they never listed that in their work history, but that was during when they were at school and they did a class project. So instead of saying 3 months experience working on a general plan. Maybe they put 30 or 40 hours into it. So anyway, be careful of that. So a couple other points: don't believe everything you think. And last one is, and I think I got the right amount of negatives in here, never don't stop not learning. So next slide. And just as a closing, again, the free membership was mentioned. There are discounts for young professionals or hardship memberships. Take a look at AEP. AEP is going to start a mentorship program in January, so you want to stay in touch with that for both mentors and mentees. The primary goal of AEP is training to have expertise in environmental impact analysis. AEP wants to have the best people doing CEQA documents to protect the environment. And that requires getting viewpoints from everyone. So just an important aspect. So again, if you're a student, you should be an AEP member. There are monthly programs. The CEQA advanced workshops are coming up first half of March. The Institute, which is an annual one-day session, is on carbon neutrality. That's going to be in June, and I believe it's going to be in Sacramento. The state conference is in Yosemite in April. And then AEP has been working with DEI initiatives. And we're also starting to do training with high schoolers, trying to get more people into the math and sciences. So again, start thinking about careers and not grades so much. So anyway, that's what I have. I think that's my last slide. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions. There's my contact information. Take a photo. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bob, for giving us that perspective of someone who's in a principal role hiring and looking for good talent. Your insight is very valuable, so thank you for that. Okay, so we're going to be moving into our second breakout room session. So we'll be bringing you back together with your smaller group, and then afterwards I will bring us all together for a closing Q&A session along with the raffle. So the two questions, or the one question for the speakers: if there are any other tips of advice we'd like to give, this will be the opportunity. And then for the students, this will be an opportunity for you to ask any additional questions, connect, network, etc. I'm going to stop this share, and I am going to open all rooms. Okay, I'm going to assign you all to some rooms. Okay. Hello, all. Thank you so much for joining. So this part of the presentation is just general Q&A with presenters who may not have been in your group, or any other questions you might have for any of us, or me too. You know, I didn't really discuss my career, but I'm a planner and I've been in the environmental field for about 5 years. So any questions you have, just throw them out there.
I had a question. At the very beginning, there was a mention about the CEQA NEPA handbook being accessed somewhere. I'm not sure where exactly.
Yeah, so that is a resource. Yep, that's Bob's holding it up, and I think mine's in my drawer right now. So that's a resource you get when you join the association, and I believe it's free, but they mail it to you once you join. And since student memberships are free now, as long as you join, you can email Madeline, and she can give you more information on joining. I believe she put her email information in there. Yeah, it's in the chat. So you can email her to get more information on how to join. But yeah, it's incredibly helpful. I use it all the time, especially as a CEQA practitioner.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I think everyone talked about some different trainings that they've done, or different trainings and workshops that are available. And I was just wondering what any of the panelists, like what they thought were the most relevant ones or most useful ones in their career.
Amy, what is your field of study?
I'm studying environmental science and management, and I have a focus on planning and policy.
On
Planning
and policy. Okay. Well, I will just mention that, you know, if you work for the state, they're really, really good about getting you trained up. So I have noticed that people who start their careers with state agencies, whether it's the Water Board or Caltrans or, you know, Department of Toxic Substances Control, they really train them up with HAZWOPER so that you can work on contaminated sites and, you know, wetland delineation surveying. So I think that was a great way to start my career. Also, just being involved in AEP will be super helpful.
Yeah, I can quickly chime in as like a planner / biologist. In grad school, I took wetland delineation. I got my basic and advanced certification for that. And that's really useful if you want to go into a more natural resource focused position, because if you go into the private sector, a lot of what you will be doing is delineating wetlands for projects. So that was a big one. And then GIS, I got my GIS certification during my master's program as well. And, you know, when you're working on these planning projects, there's always math, there's always figures involved, and being able to understand how to create maps is very useful. I would caveat with that, be careful, because in your career, you can become pigeonholed as like the GIS person and then end up not doing like planning or like field work, which I love to do. So, but it is good to, you know, get that well-rounded experience. Yeah, those are my two big ones. Oh, and technical writing. So CEQA is very different than academic writing. It's much more like to the point and simplified and clear. Like the whole point is to have very like clear writing, which can be very different than academic writing when you're writing, you know, like a journal for a publication or something. So those are my big things. I don't know, Bob or Erica, if you wanted to add anything.
I thought that was all really good. There's other specialty trainings, so you can get phase 1 and phase 2, and you can get for EPA cleanups of contaminated sites. There's a whole variety of different trainings that are out there for you. I was really interested in offline. I hope to reach out to Sean about his experience with the project management professional certification, because I have been fascinated by that. So just an FYI, I will be doing my own LinkedIning after this conversation. So thank you, Sean. it's just really neat to think about what other people are doing too. So something that's really neat about a lot of nonprofits, but not all, is that they will expose you to a bunch of different projects. For example, not only have I done BMP work after the glass fire to isolate toxins and contain those and keep those from the watershed, I currently do creek restorations and creek trash cleanups and all sorts of things related to creek health. And in this Anthropocene we are in, reducing those impacts on our natural waterways. But then I've also done prescribed burns, and there's a firefighter 2 that you need to get for any prescribed burns or burn piles that you want to do. So we are in climate change. It is a known fact, and that certification has popped up more than once on my as being a really useful certification for getting into biochar work, for getting into prescribed burning, or for just being a great neighbor for people that are out in more rural environments.
And I mentioned in my group that, getting ahead on what the trends are. Again, I think our last conference, there was a session on CEQA trends. So, we're talking about energy, housing, wildfire, just getting ahead of the game, because environmental consulting firms are looking for people who know that kind of stuff. And so, or at least backfill some of the need to do those kinds of projects. So and I'd say all kinds of training, just do it. We had a lot more people registered than actually showed up, and that's certainly true, I think, for students. But again, just stick to it. It's very important to get whatever training, and with Zoom and Teams and such, we can do these statewide trainings very simply and free.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions?
Are there any future events coming up from AEP?
Future events, yes. At the state level, there are a couple. I think Bob mentioned a few, right, Bob?
Yes.
If you go on the, there's some too.
They're listed on the calendar at the califaep.org website. But again, I mentioned that the advanced CEQA course, that might be a little rough because it has a lot of case law in it. The basic CEQA essentials is usually offered in the fall, but first part of March will be that. The Institute on Carbon Neutrality will be in June. And of course, the state conference. There are sometimes that there's opportunities to have student posters at the state conference and student volunteers. So you might make contact with the, what is the chapter putting it on? By Fresno, so whatever that chapter is. So they'll be looking for things. Bring resume. I mean, it's a great opportunity. Again, it's a beautiful setting, an expensive hotel, but you could cram 10 students in there, right? So in a room. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, if you can make your way up there, volunteer. Erica mentioned the Salmon Restoration Federation, SRF. That's another opportunity for poster sessions and such. So going to some of these conferences with a resume in hand, or if you bump into where people are.
And I will definitely attest to that. Like, I went to an AEP, I think advanced SQL workshop, and then I met one of the principals at my current company and just got to know him, had no agenda. But then, a couple years later, when I wanted to switch positions and do something more natural resource focused, that opportunity presented itself. So I know, and all of you know, I'm sure, the value of networking and getting to know people. And you never know when you can help them or when they can help you in your career. And then speaking to events, I know, so I'm the VP of, in addition to, being a planner and a biologist, I'm the VP of programs for the San Francisco chapter. So I throw like events like this. And my next one's going to be a wildfire one. No tentative date yet, but I will be putting more information out once that's available. So if you become an AEP member, you'll get all that information. And then Sean's the VP of programs for the East Bay. So he throws events there. So definitely another, I know you've heard so many plugs for joining AEP tonight, but if you want to know more of the events, just join that and you'll be put on the mailing list. I think Sean added some great resources to the chat. So that CEQA handbook, in addition to having the hard copy, you can get an online PDF right here, which is actually super useful. Like I often will just use my PDF version when I'm writing like EIRs or ISMNDs, that such. And then we also have a podcast, which is pretty cool. So yeah, so are there any other last minute questions before I do the raffle?
I just want to mention, I put in so we've been having monthly brown bag lunches on all kinds of topics, quite a few on tribal consultation. But I put the North Coast AEP, APA, so there's some recordings there. We have trainings every month. So.
Awesome, thank you, Bob. Okay, so let me do the raffle now. So this is gonna be for a Patagonia backpack, a Hydra flask, and a Write in the Rain notebook. Do we have a drum roll? If I want to do a drum roll, I just announce it. It is Karina McDonald. Are you here, Karina?
Yeah, that's me.
Hey, okay, here. Let me give you my email, and then I will have you send me your mailing address, and I will send that to you. Congratulations. And thank you all so much for joining today. This has been so much fun for me, and I'm feel free to connect with any of us. And thank you, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
I need to send you my email. Okay, Karina. So my invert.
Thank you, Kathleen. That was great. You're such a rock star.
Thank you. Okay, I'm sending it to you, Karina. Okay, there's my email. So if you go ahead, oh shoot, hold on. There's no period in the middle. I apologize. Okay, there's a period between my first name and my last name. Environmental. Okay, there you go. Send me your mailing address, and I'll send you all that those fun goodies.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you for speaking, everyone. It was good to hear all of this. All right.
Really nice to meet you.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye. Well, thank you, Sean.